All the MBA aspirants, welcome to the show. In the session, we will focus on CAT and GMAT. We will have a panel of two of our esteemed alumni with us to discuss the same. Introducing first, Mr. Mayank Raj. Mr. Mayank is an alumnus from the batch of 2018 and a proud resident of H4. Mayank cracked an exceptional 100 percentile in CAT and joined IIM Ahmedabad to pursue his MBA. He worked as a management consultant at KPMG and currently he is a product manager at Persistence Labs in UAE. Hello, Mayank. Are you there in the meet?
Yeah, hi, Enough. Nice to meet you, and yeah, really excited for this conversation.
To discuss the bits and bytes of the GMAT, we have with us Mr. Jaymal Lodha. Jaymal is an alumnus from the batch of 2022. He scored an outstanding 760 out of 800 in his GMAT. He's currently pursuing a deferred MBA from Wharton as a Wharton Moelis Fellow and is also an associate consultant at Bain Co. Jaymal, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So without any further ado, let's just get directly into the session then. So would you like to tell us a bit about yourselves?
Sure, man. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, you can go first. Yeah.
Great. So, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. As Abhinav already mentioned, I just graduated recently in 2022. I was from the civil department and I'm currently working as an associate consultant at Bain. During my Insti life, I was actively involved in the debate society. I was also the DAM coordinator for the civil department. And it's during this time that I thought of applying for a deferred MBA to Wharton and a bunch of other US-based, sort of MBA colleges. And I got into Wharton and I'm now a Moelis Fellow, which just means that I have the option to join Wharton in the next 2 to 4 years based on whenever I feel I'm sort of ready to go and experience it. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have throughout the session. Over to you.
Great, Jaymal. Mayank, would you like to go now?
Hello everyone. I'm Mayank. I joined IITB 2014 to 18 batch in civil engineering, like Jaymal. So same there. I was in Hostel 4. Quite a big part of my Insta life was Hostel 4 itself. I was the sports secretary there, so made a lot of people play a lot of games. But it's sad the Hostel 4 is now broken down. It was a sad moment, I guess, for the entire alumni of the hostel. But yeah, I was involved there. I was part of the ACAR team. And yeah, that was kind of the Insta life. And I dived right after there into MBA. So I did my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad 2018-2020 batch. Then I worked as a management consultant with KPMG for almost a year, 3 months. And I got excited into Web3 and crypto. And right now I'm working in one crypto firm called Persistence. We are a startup, 30, 40 members. I am here for the past 1.5 months. I'm doing mostly product management. So yeah, that's a bit about myself and really excited to be here. And yeah, any questions you have, I'm ready to answer. And yeah.
Great to hear about you, both of you. So let's directly get into the MBA stuff then. So why and when did you decide to do an MBA? Jaymal, would you like to take this first?
Sure. So as I mentioned again, for me, it was a deferred MBA, which meant I wasn't going to join immediately. And I knew that even if I got the admit, I had that flexibility to be able to go ahead and do it maybe 2 to 4 years later. But in terms of why I want to do an MBA, I think I had a couple of things which were clear to me. Number one was because I'd gone for like a semester exchange in college as well. And just in general, based on my experiences as a debater, I had the chance to sort of interact with people from colleges abroad and, experience the education abroad as well. So it was quite clear that I wanted a very diverse experience for my master's, which is my MBA, which allows me to sort of, be in a global environment, learn from them, which is when I decided to pursue, like, say, an MBA from abroad and not India. Even though obviously like your IIMs are absolutely great choices for MBA as well. Number two, I think in terms of why MBA itself, I think it really sort of acts like the boost to the next steps of your career, right? It allows you to A, switch industry that you want to, but B, build that network and that sort of experience set, which will really help you accelerate a career in the future, right? Maybe your peers are going to go ahead and become CEOs of global companies, just like you sort of came into IIT Bombay and built a strong network. Similarly, MBA is a more refined way to do that and an extended way of sort of building connections with people. And that's why I went for an MBA per se. in terms of deferred MBA, finally, I'm sorry, I'll keep this a bit concise, is the reason I chose deferred MBA and not maybe immediate joining was I wanted to get some sort of work experience personally. I wanted to understand what do I actually like doing and what do I want to do after my MBA, which is why I wanted that time sort of to work in, say, in the industry, work in some companies, and then probably go and pursue my MBA to be able to better utilize that in my personal sort of. So yeah, my
Yeah, so pursuing an MBA was something, I guess, not on my mind till I was in the third year and trying to figure out what to do next after campus. So it's majorly like coming from the background I come, like I didn't have a lot of business understanding, business experience, and whatever I got was through my internships itself. And I thought I wanted a few more years to kind of figure that out, like where do I fit in, how I want to take my career forward. And I felt that MBA would be the right thing because like Jaymal mentioned, the kind of colleagues that the students you get along with you is really diverse, and especially like IIM Ahmedabad, they focus a lot on bringing people from all backgrounds and that's pretty helpful. And for me, while I understand there is a thing where you should have some work experience before going an MBA, especially if you are going abroad. But for me, it was a good experience going right after also, because there were people who were coming in with those 2-3 years of experience. And for me, that was really helpful in growing myself as an individual really quickly, because I could learn from their experience and sort myself out a bit more quickly in that sense, and then decide on where I want to go next. So for me, it was more like sorting out myself on where I see myself fitting in, because right after NCT, I was not very clear which sector or which domain worked the best for me. I was clear civil engineering wouldn't work, and that was it. So it gave me that time, and that's why I guess I decided to pursue that MBA. Yeah.
Great answer. So just to add on to this, what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of shifting from an engineering background to a management background? Like, what changes did you observe?
You want to go first since you already completed?
Yeah. Sure. So yeah, I think in INSTI we have a lot of focus on numbers and in general the technical aspect of things, which is really helpful in certain aspects of the business. So for example, if you are a developer, if you have, for me, like what I see in my friends also, if you have figured out in INSTI that there is certain domain you want to try out, it's best to do that. And for example, if you like to code, go try out coding for a bit. If you are interested in a core course, go do some job there and try to figure out whether that works out for you. But if it's not very clear, then that MBA brings that breadth of understanding of what are the different possibilities, and in terms of the kind of courses you do, as well as the kind of people you meet, and the internship programs that is there. It is very serious, very sorted. So for example, I interned with Unilever, and that was pretty interesting because I could get a very good understanding of how the entire business works, what are different verticals, and that gave me a pretty good view of where I could place myself versus where I wouldn't want to be. And that was kind of really helpful from the MBA program. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's not much to add there. I think Mayank really covered it very well in terms of why the MBA specifically, gives you that breadth and depth of opportunities, and just lets you understand every industry. I think even the way the classes are structured, you have a lot of flexibility to be able to take electives that you really want to do, right? So suppose somebody wants to pursue product management after MBA, it's really up to you to be able to go ahead and charter that sort of pathway for yourself. I can obviously speak slightly more about the MBAs abroad, and especially, say, Wharton, for example, a large part of the curriculum is electives, which means you can go ahead and pursue exactly what you want. Just like we have, say, minors in IIT Bombay, you also have the option to pursue like a similar sort of minor in Wharton as well, where you can specialize in particular parts. So it could be cryptocurrencies, it could be product management, could be, I don't know, private equity, whatever really interests you, you have the option to be able to do that. And in terms of the switch from engineering to MBA, a large part of why you want to do an MBA is also because we don't really have that formal financial background. We don't really have a formal understanding of many financial concepts, probably, like say an accountant or like somebody from like a CA kind of background. And that's where the MBA really helps you bridge that gap. So the core skill set required to do well at these courses is probably still quantitative skills, things you already use mostly and apply. So it's not really a large skill to be able to go at code, but obviously the whole point of the MBA is because you know something you never learned about. And that's the kind of mindset you should go in with if you want to.
Great. Like we talked about the advantages, but what do you think is the disadvantage, or is there a demerit to it as well?
Sure, I can take it. So I think, especially for MBAs abroad, the biggest sort of consideration for people is the price, right? The cost of the MBA, because it's really, really expensive. You're thinking upwards of $200,000 without scholarship, of course, for 2 years. And that adds up to quite a lot for most people, right? So just knowing that you are very, very clear about what you want to do after your MBA is very important if you want to go ahead and pursue an MBA from abroad. If you're very clear that I want to pursue a career only in India and I don't want to ever probably live abroad or move abroad, probably doesn't make sense for you to then go ahead and invest that much money in a global network and all of that, because you might not be able to go ahead and leverage that. I think number two is just the opportunity cost, because those 2 years in an MBA, you could probably go ahead and do a job or like a startup or something you actually go ahead and like doing. And there's obviously an opportunity cost in going back to school, learning stuff in courses, then giving exams, all of that. So I think it's very important that when you go ahead and do your MBA, it fits in well with your career goals and with what you're doing in the moment. So for somebody who's doing a startup, it doesn't make sense for you probably to go ahead and do an MBA immediately. But if someone looking to make a pivot into a different industry, MBA is probably the right thing to do for you in that moment. So yeah, it's very subjective. If it's right or
Yeah, so what I have seen is people do MBA for one of these, I think, three reasons. One is someone like me who is not very certain of what he wants to do. So that's one kind of people who come. Usually these are freshers. Another one is people who want to switch jobs and they are certain which is the next sector they want to go in. So for example, someone is doing coding and got bored out of it. So that person wants to move into say consulting or finance. So that's another kind of person. And third is that someone who is not liking what that person is doing, but now wants to explore and get into something else. So if I divide the entire batch I had, I would divide it into these three buckets. And so for each of them, the kind of choices the people have when they are going to do an MBA are different, and to actually weigh them in the best possible manner, because what Jaymal mentioned is it's like two years of investment of time as well as money. It's that you need to weigh that really well before you dive in, because for example, for me, while the MBA was 2 years, but to pay off the loans and all, it takes a bit of time. So for example, in some way, in financial sense, it's not a 2 year, but a 5 year program, even if the course ends after 2 years. So that's one way of how I see it also. So that's why you need to be very sure of the consequences of it, why you want to do it, and what you want to explore. And I guess that's one of the reasons people say that you should do it after you get some work ex, because you get that perspective from before. But at the same time, even if you're a fresher, you want to do it, you should be clear what you want to pursue. Like if you are going with an exploratory mindset, good, fair enough, go and explore. I did the same, and I think it paid off pretty well for me. But if you are sure you want to get into a particular field and that's why you're going there, then you should be, because it's a very quick course. It ends in not even 2 years. It's a 21-month course. So time flies by anything, and there are a lot of hundreds of things going on. So being certain of the end goal is pretty important once you dive in. So that's the most important thing. And if you're not clear of that, then that will be the biggest con in that sense of what we are doing.
I think that pretty much beautifully sums up the advantages and disadvantages. I was pretty much the first category that you talked about. So coming to the next question, when do you think is the right time for starting preparing for these exams like CAT or GMAT? You can go for GMAT, Jaymal, please.
Yeah, sure. So for GMAT, I think the good part is that your score is valid. The second advantage of GMAT is that you can literally take it any time of the day and any day of the week. So I personally gave my GMAT online from Copenhagen. You could give it from anywhere in the world at any time. Doesn't really matter. That's the great flexibility. So you can sort of time it based on whenever you think your semester is like chill, or because maybe you have a winter break coming up or something like that. Typically, like, I would recommend the third year, second semester people are usually slightly free before the internship, and that's slightly a good time to apply as well because you have a little bit more clarity as to whether an MBA makes sense for you or whether US MBA makes sense for you or not. So typically third, first, second sem or fourth, second sem is a good time to go ahead and get the GMAT. But again, it's not a wrong time as such. It's so flexible. In terms of how much time is budget for typically 2 to 3 months is what I would say for something given that we already have a decent background, like basic, we don't really need to go and do it from scratch. Where we do struggle and require more effort is the verbal aspect, because the GMAT verbal is quite challenging and tricky. It's not like the verbals and like others, but also for the company tests and stuff. It's a little bit more challenging, which requires give like up to like 5 to 6 attempts of GMAT. So people typically give like 2 to 3 attempts to get the study for GMAT.
Great. Mayank, you can go for CAT. Like how much time?
Sure. So, like Jaymal also mentioned, we at INSTI are mostly good at maths and the DILR aspect of it. But the verbal is where I also struggled at the start. So, it depends on how much because CAT is pretty competitive in nature, and you need to get a call from one of the top 3 IIMs. You need to score like 99.9 or above. So. That given that backdrop, it's good to kind of assess yourself first. Where do you stand? So you could there are a lot of mocks or available online. You could give 1 or 2 mocks to kind of figure out what's your strong suit, what's not your strong suit. And so I do not think I can put a timeline to it. For me, it was mostly regular practice along with my placement here, because that's where usually people do it, right? If you are in INSTI and you want to join right after, or you want to get a deferred admission, which IIM Ahmedabad gives for 2 years, the CAT exam is in your at the end of your 7th semester, just before the placement. So it's kind of where both things are going in parallel. So that's why the most important thing is to plan it well. I've seen people start preparing from their 6th semester itself, start of 6th semester, but I personally started in 7th semester itself, and that worked out for me. Because for me it was like I knew I had to focus mostly on my verbals, because DILR and quant was sorted. So that's how I think you should approach it, where you know yourself first, the area you have to focus, and figure out how much time you can commit basically, given the placements or the other commitments you have, and basis that you can prepare it.
Got it. Can you please elaborate on the exam pattern part and how was exactly your preparation strategy for the same? Jaymal, would you like to go first?
Sure. So the GMAT format, I think, it's going to change this year, by the way. So this information might not be relevant 6 months from now. From what I've heard, they plan to drastically change the exam pattern by the last quarter of the year, which is, I think, November, December is when you see a completely new pattern. The core of the exam remains the same, which is like currently you have 4 sections in GMAT. One is your quant section, which is your quantitative mathematics based things. where they're not testing your calculation skills, but they're testing your math concepts, very basic concepts, things you've already done in JEE mains and advanced level. The second part is your verbal, which again has 3 subsections. The verbal is, again, as I mentioned, slightly more challenging than what we're used to. It has 3 parts. One is reading comprehension, just like a comprehension we've all done in school. Second is called sentence correction. That's the trickier part. And third is critical reasoning. The third and fourth part of the test, which is the argumentative essay and the IR section. These don't really directly contribute to your GMAT score. So your GMAT score just comprises of your quant and verbal. These 2 other sections, a separate score goes out to the MBA schools. Now, what GMAT, which is the council which creates the GMAT test, is doing this year is removing the argumentative essay section completely and also reducing the time of the test. Currently, the test takes around 50 hours. GMAT is now making it around 2 hours and reduce the number of questions, which is going to make it a lot more accessible for people to give the test. So I would recommend, if you're going to give a GMAT, probably wait for the format now, because it's probably going to be slightly easier to get the section that will be lesser and all the questions. So just look out for the updates in the GMAT format this for the year. But I think lastly, what they test for and the kind of resources referred to in terms of concepts remain the same. That won't change.
Great. Mayank, would you like to go for CAT now?
Sure. So for CAT, when I gave the exam, it was a 3-hour exam, but now what I understand, it's 2 hours with lesser number of questions. But the pattern is essentially the same, where there are 3 sections. There is quant, there is DILR, and then there is verbal. So equal distribution among these 3. And yeah, you get 2 hours to write the paper, and there is no separate markings for each of one. So there is a common score based on which you get your percentile. But some colleges have some cutoff for different sections also. But if you are getting good score, that doesn't matter. So yeah, and the quant is usually what we have done till class 10. So it's not that challenging, and most of us will know almost everything that will come in. For DIR, it needs a bit of practice because it comes naturally to start it, naturally, and there are different kind of questions that can come, and you get to know that only through practice. And similarly for verbal, it's not as challenging as a GMAT, but still it's a bit challenging for people who are not very used to reading quickly and getting influences out of it. So a large part of it is reading comprehension, which needs some getting used to and practice. So from my perspective, it's mostly a practice game and a speed game in that sense, so that you are able to try out that paper. And that was at least the way I looked at it. More practice gets me more understanding of what could come. And yeah, I guess it's not. I wouldn't say it's really difficult or really challenging as the kind of questions that come. It's mostly challenging because of the time in which they fit problems, and that's where you have to perform. In that sense, that's what differentiates it from JEE.
Cool. So, like, how was the journey post CAT and GMAT scores were released? Like, were you already excited? You knew what have you done? Like, yeah, something about that.
Thank you. Can go first.
Yeah.
Sure. So the moment I wrote CAT, after that I had to go back and do my placements. So no time to figure out what happened. So I guess that's how it's for everyone who is in 4th year. Like it's a parallel thing. So I got placed, and then the results come out 1.5 months later. So it's kind of a period of rejoice in between where I got placed and we had that grad trip and everything. So once the results come in, then the interview calls are usually 1.5, 2 months away. So you know whether you have got interview call. interviews, like we cannot predict what will be there, but it's like there are some basics that everyone covers, and there are a lot of resources online also on how to go about it. Some coachings also supporting taking mocks and all, kind of get prepared for it. So that's what I did, and had interviews with ABC. Well, I think I also gave, and yeah, I got through in A and B, and the rest I don't. Yeah, so A and B I got in, and I decided to go for IMA. Many of friends also took deferral after getting in, and they did their MBA 2 years down the line. So that's another option that a lot of people are not aware of while they are in campus. So people should definitely check that out also. So yeah, that was kind of the journey, 40-50 days to kind of have prepare for the interviews, where it's more like the kind of mindset the college wants from you is something you have to prepare for, get your head sorted, trying to get the best structure to so we always have our own personality. So trying to get the best structures of it so that we can communicate it in the best way in the interviews, everything I guess is needed for an IIM interview. And yeah, so that was the journey.
Right. I think for me it was quite different. I think because with the applications, US MBA schools, there is like a fixed percentage of basic aspect of the application. That is to say that your GMAT score, your essays, your interview, all of them will collectively sort of contribute to you being selected. And there was no guarantee. Which meant that with my GMAT score, I did not even know that if I had a better chance or not. Because I know many people with better scores also got coaches, and people like the lower ones who also gotten it. So the good or bad part about US MBA schools is there's no like black and white with respect to scores. It's just one aspect which can help prop up your application more. In addition to which is I believe the most critical aspect, your essays, your recommendations, and your interview. So the way I would see the GMAT score, specifically the companies of IIT Bombay's of that, is we have a slightly higher point of expectation onto us, simply because a large number of people applying from India are like us, that is engineering sort of background with high GMAT scores, which is why it's important for us to go ahead and cross the threshold, that is that 720, 737. You want to be in the higher range of that to be able to go ahead and be competitive with your peers or in terms of GMAT scores. I think I saw a question in the chat as to which other schools I applied to. I applied to Wharton, Chicago, Kellogg, Stanford, and in Columbia. I got into all except for Stanford.
Great. So I think that sums up both of your journeys, initial journeys. So what are the factors that help a student stand out during the selection procedure? What do you think? Like, is it the UG performance, school performance, then your work ex and everything? What are the other factors including them?
I think this is our first. I think this just ties back with the previous answer that I just gave. That in terms of an MBA application for US schools, there is no clear-cut formula that you can go ahead and say, okay, this is what works for me. Because, say, even for example, consulting structures, these two speaks in my resume in language statistics. But that's not true for an US MBA application. Like, you could have the most unique story out there that you might really love, or you might have the best profile so generic that you don't really think you can add value to the school and you might get rejected. So, a large part about the US MBA application that works well for people is just being able to set up an answer. Right? And even more so when you're writing your essays and when you're presenting your entire narrative to the admissions committee. So obviously we do care about people who achieve the long and have consistent track achievement. So everything from your school grades to your UG track record, academically, non-academic, everything matters. But there's no one thing or like say a clear list of things that you should have. So for anybody sort of something, am I good enough to apply or not? I don't think it's fair to look at it from a very black and white perspective. Just look at it from the perspective that, okay, do I have a unique story to tell? are my reasons for going ahead and pursuing an MBA from this college clear? And do I really know why I wanted this? If the answer to the above questions is yes, then you can definitely find a way to work around with your current profile as well. Because again, a lot of us are in IITB. We do come from good track of academic levels in our school days. That's why we probably came and chose to pursue IIM. So a large part of the things they're looking for are probably already in place for you. It's about how you clear the answers that probably aren't there. And once you made the decision to go and pursue an MBA and sort of from abroad especially, then you can go and find those elements and put them into your skills. So don't look at it from, okay, what really worked for me, what didn't work for me.
Fine. Mayank, would you like to tell the Indian perspective of this? Because I think that is starkly different from the foreign MBA.
Yeah, I think it's 80% the same in terms of like while while for foreign MBAs there is a black box in terms of how the actual inspection is done for the candidates. In Indian MBAs there is a scoring sheet, so you know that how much score is allocated to certain aspects. For example, your 10 score, 12 score, BTEC, CVs, and so on. Like if you have WorkX, and so all these details add up to certain scores. But then in the interviews, when the interviews start, it's a black box, and the professor sitting in front of you doesn't know anything about your profile. So things start from zero there. And the amount of weightage that interviews have is quite significant. So it's kind of the make or break thing. So how you present yourself in the interview actually matters and actually makes or breaks the admission for you. And there one has to present, like Jaymal mentioned, the true self, in the sense that if you are, and these guys are really experienced, and I have talked to a few professors after joining in, what they look for and kind of how do they go about selecting students. And it's more like, firstly, they look for genuinity, like they can smell bias like anything because they have been doing this for a lot of time. So that's one of the important aspects. And second is that the kind of why the student wants to do that MBA is really important to them. And like Jaymal mentioned, whether that profile will add value to the classroom and all, because everywhere it's a case methodology where everyone has to bring their own opinions, their own ideas to the classroom and to the group. And so it's really important to have that story really clearly defined on why you want to do an MBA, what would you do after the MBA, and how would the MBA help you. And these are the major pointers that kind of defines whether you get in or not.
Totally get it. I think the audience has a lot of questions to ask from both of you. So let's just wind up with one more question, and then we'll open the floor for the audience.
Yeah, sure.
Like, what advice would you like to give to someone, say in a third year of BTech or BS degree here, aspire to pursue a postgraduate in management? What is that one advice that you would like to give to them?
I think, like, for me personally, I was also super confused in my BTech years as to what I want to do. And one thing I would always follow to sort of make things easy for me is the process of elimination. That is to say, things I don't want to do for sure. And I was very clear I don't want to go ahead and pursue core or say coding. That leaves me with a bunch of options. And then I can sort of go ahead and research in these options and know what is something which actually excites me. So using that same process, I was very clear that if I do a master's, it will be an MBA. And if I do an MBA, it will only be from abroad. After that, the next step is to go ahead and apply for a deferred MBA or / normal, give my GMAT, etc. So for anybody who is sort of confused as to what I want to do, just follow the process of elimination in general, and then all pieces sort of follow, from that. So yeah, that's the one advice I would give.
Mayank, what's the one piece from you?
So I think like in institute gives us a lot of opportunity to explore ourselves, like what our interests are, and what it brings also is like there are a lot of options in front of us, which is kind of confusing at the same time. Like Jaymal also mentioned, and I have also gone through the same thing. I don't know what I wanted to do right after BTech. So it's more like I would say any master's degree is really good to get that exposure in one particular field. But if you are interested in something, you should definitely go ahead, whether it's core, non-core, whatever. And if you do an MBA only if you are certain you are doing it, you are certain that you want to get in that field. But for example, it also constrains you in certain ways, because you cannot go ahead and take a financial risk and do a startup right after, or you cannot go ahead and take a 6-month break, figure out yourself, these kind of things, which I've seen my batchmates do and do really well, and come out recharged and do really well in whatever they pursue after. So that's why kind of sometimes going with the flow, in the sense that what you want to try out, it's good to try out there, because there is no baggage as such, which comes after doing a master's course. So in that sense, that would be my advice, that if you are interested in something, try it out before say going for an MBA, or before going for and do a master's course only when you are certain you are interested in that state. Yeah.
Great. Those were some lovely advices. Now let's move on to the audience questions. I'll just read out them from the chat itself. So Miraj Alam is asking what other MBA schools. You have already answered that, I guess. She was also asking, why didn't you apply to HBS, Jaymal?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, right, like the MBA sort of application process is very different for the US. So for example, I didn't also apply to an MIT, which is a great brand name and logical to apply to. But the reason you don't go ahead and apply to certain schools is because a large part of the US MBA experience is also about cultural fit. These are things we don't really think about that much in India. Like, it's mostly about the ROI we can get from these schools. But in the US, people pay a large part of attention to the cultural fit in the school. And, do you fit into the school's culture, as well as does the school and the culture environment in the school fit with what you want from the MBA? Personally, in that moment, and this is obviously straight out of undergrad, I was very, very clear about what I want to do, like many of us. I didn't think that MBA, for example, slightly more academic MBA was something I really wanted to do. Or maybe from an HBS perspective, it didn't make sense for me to go ahead and something from case studies that So I was like, rather than looking at why I applied to X school or which school to apply to, ask yourself what sort of culture you want to experience when you go for an MBA in the US. Talk to alumni, always the one with the highest ranks or the sort of the one might not be the perfect fit for you. Maybe the perfect fit for you is a place like Sri which has a really collaborative culture of like people helping each other. It might not be the first thing comes to mind, but it's one thing which we sort of don't know that well in India, but like it's very common in US is that people don't really view these schools very differently in the US. Like once you have a top 7-8 schools for your MBA, people sort of the same amount of expectations. And it's not about what you sort of got from these schools, that is the brand name itself. So think about the brand name when deciding which schools to apply.
Great. So Shraddha Kamath is asking, considering the fee abroad, what means scholarship would you cater to the ease of studying in India?
Right. So, I mean, I'll answer this question. One is if you apply to deferred MBA, and if you get that MBA, any scholarship that you apply for will be sort of the application process starts when you're about to join. So say to join next year, before joining, I will ask what scholarships I'm eligible for and which one should I get. It doesn't happen in advance. So even if I have the admit right now, I don't know what scholarships I might get. Number two is if you apply to the conventional schools, right? When you apply for MBA or WorkX, there are multiple kinds of scholarships available. One are obviously scholarships from the college, wherein they have multiple alumni, donors who instituted many scholarships for different candidates of students, different classes of students. That is to say, like even from different countries, different industries. So those are one class of scholarships. Number two, you have scholarships from private organizations and individuals within India as well, which go ahead and sponsor certain individuals every year for these programs abroad. And number 3, the option to go ahead and finance, and one of the most common options is to go ahead and take an education. Especially if you get into one of these like top schools, it's much easier to get these loans, and the interest rates are much lower. One interesting perspective to sort of think about when applying this money is that your starting salary out of a US school, especially when you convert to Indian rupees, is also likely to be very much higher than say what in India. Which means the time you take to go ahead and repay the loan, whether you do an IIM or you do a Wharton MBA, and assuming you work in the US like that, would not necessarily be too different. Obviously, maybe 1 or 2 years here and there, but you'll still need like 3 to 5 years in India as well, 3 to 5 years even in the US to pay the MBA back. So, as long as you're convinced that you want to work in the US or abroad for a few years after your MBA, it shouldn't be a challenge for you with that kind of salary. And hence, like financial situation should not be a very, very big problem if you are for a very short time on this.
Fine, then moving ahead with the next question from Chetni she's asking MBA versus MS Finance. Like any of you can take, like which one to choose?
Knows better than this. I'm not too. I had never considered MS Finance. I'm not too sure.
Mayank, anything on?
Even I'm not very sure about the MS Finance courses. A few of my friends have gone there right after NC also, but it was majorly because they were really interested in finance and really knew they wanted to pursue finance. But I'm not sure like how to compare these two. Except that if you are really sure that you want to do finance, maybe MS Finance would be better. But I'm not sure about that, about the curriculum and everything.
So Jaymal, quick questions for you from 2 people, Vijay and Rishika. How do you break into ABP, and the other one is any specific coaching resources you took for GMAT preparation?
I'll answer Rishika's question. So in terms of specific coaching and resources, people usually, from what I've seen, prefer studying on their own because I think GMAT coaching specifically is slightly more expensive than like it can range from a few tens of thousands to even a lakh maybe. And that's quite a big financial commitment for a test, which I think can easily be prepared for by yourself, especially as people from IIT Bombay. So I personally just refer to the official guide. So GMAT Council, again, the council which goes and runs the test, releases a set of official guides every year for GMAT. And these guides have questions with solutions. They have theory and all of that. So that's a great starting point, I believe, for the GMAT, where you can read the theory from those books and start running the questions from that book itself. In addition to that, you can always refer to the sort of material available from these other coaching organizations like Manhattan Prep, Kaplan, Wobble, multiple other organizations of sort, which have their own books and their own coaching material out there. That's a great thing to sort of refer to maybe after you've done your GMAT OG. I would strongly recommend start with GMAT OG and do those first because that gives you a flavor of what the GMAT questions actually look like. Every other coaching body will try to make questions like the GMAT. But the GMAT official book is retired GMAT questions. So they were actual questions asked to candidates. And that's the best starting point in my opinion. The thing I would do in case I was stuck anywhere would refer to YouTube videos. A few interesting channels are the GMAT Club. That's the most popular one. They have videos on literally every topic on the GMAT. The second one I really liked was something called Wizako, Wizako. That really helped me clarify a lot of concepts in Wobble. And, you're going to find a host of other GMAT prep YouTube channels for particular concepts that you want. So what I would do is if I got stuck in a particular concept is look at a few YouTube videos, refer to a few online blogs, and then go back to attend the question in a different manner. And that really worked for me. So if you're able to budget like 2 to 3 months and you study on your own, I think it should be enough time to not need any resources. But typically, I know some friends who struggle with Wobble a bit, so they refer to some like coaching institute or some like instructor to help them with Wobble, and that's completely fine as well. Right? If you think you're sort of hitting a plateau and aren't able to accelerate your Wobble scores, it's completely okay to go then and take a Wobble sort of instructor's help and accelerate your scores to level.
Great. Coming to the next question, like I think both of the questions are literally the same. So what are some ways that a person can improve their profile CV or add a spike to their profile? is
And
what Malika and
first.
Viraj are asking. Yeah, Mayank, would you like to go first?
So for the CV part, I guess it's there are certain things that always work well. It's like the your CGPA is kind of one of the biggest pointer, I guess, whether it's an Indian MBA or a foreign MBA, that matters a lot. Then the kind of internships or experience you have had in is also matters. But everything coming together, how everything comes together is something that's really important. Like the story that you build around it. Uh, so it's like first you build the building blocks you have. It could be your CGPA, it could be your experiences, it could be leading some club in the institute or something like that. So any of these factors can work together to a good CV. Some people are really have really good performance in one of these, and that also works well. Some people are good at overall, and they have a well-rounded CV, and that also works. So it's more like whatever what you interests you, and there you do really well. So that when you tell the story about it, tell it really well, and it's a really rounded story, and that's something that cracks, I guess, because that really gets you the attention and differentiates you from a lot of applications that are out there. So yeah, Jaymal, your thoughts?
Right. So for the US MBA, it's slightly different. I think, as I mentioned, right, like the conventional way to look at things in NC is from a spike or a peak perspective. That is a consulting lens to look at it from. That having like a good CPI, a good intern, a good D1 is the formula of success in life. While obviously that increases the chances, it's not the necessary sort of element for you to apply for an MBA abroad. And for sure, it doesn't guarantee. I think what's very important, and this also answers the sort of question that Shirag had, is that in the US MBA, a large part of your application and your candidature depends on your story. And when I mean story, I mean what you tell the MBA students. This is why I want to do an MBA. These are my plans after my MBA and before my MBA. If you're able to show in a linear manner that, look, from a very young age, everything I've done has sort of demonstrated to you that I can excel in this particular field and I can contribute to the college and I will excel in this field after my MBA as well. That is the sort of short formula for you to be able to go ahead and convince them that he's a good candidate for an MBA. And to elaborate a little bit more on that, so if, for example, you're somebody who's really into, wants to go ahead and help social causes and wants to do social entrepreneurship, for example, if you have demonstrated consistently from a young age, working with NGOs, working with social and non-profit organizations, and then you've also sort of gotten into a job which also is going to do that before your MBA, that's a really strong evidence to show that, okay, I am someone who's always been involved in that. And hence, it's a natural progression for me to go into social entrepreneurship after my MBA. So similarly, in my case, because debating was a large part of my sort of NCT life and things I've done, it wasn't something which just came randomly and happened in NCT. It's something I was always interested in from a very young age. And a lot of choices that I made in my life, in that, like, not consciously, were because of debating or around public speaking and about like being able to go ahead and communicate what I really feel. And I think that's where I was able to convince the MBA AdCom that, this is something I've consistently done and I will continue to do so even after my MBA. So that's the unique part about the US MBA, where you need to be able to go and find that one sort of hook or that niche for yourself as to what you really like doing, and then convince them that it's something you will excel at even in MBA.
Yes, so I guess we can move on to the next question now. I think that pretty much answers it. So Simon is asking, can we settle there after MBA? What are you thinking? Will you return after your MBA? Jaymal.
Yeah, I think you can definitely settle there after an MBA. That's why a lot of people actually pursue an MBA from abroad, because they want to move abroad, get that international experience. Even if you don't want to settle there, it's probably not a bad idea to work there for a few years, get acquainted to a different working style, working environment, build that global network like I mentioned. Because obviously, like, I don't know if you guys already know this, but like a lot of these big companies that we all so famously know have their headquarters abroad, and working directly from the headquarter obviously is probably a significant advantage to your career progression. If you're looking for a global role, it's probably the best way to go ahead and do that. In terms of what I want to do and if I want to return after my MBA, honestly, I don't know. I can't give you a clear-cut answer because I will decide that once I'm there and once I've worked for a few years. But I think the decision about like whether you want to go for an MBA abroad should, I think, still be from a slightly long-term horizon. That is to say, if you say you want to go for an MBA abroad, be prepared mentally at least that you want to stay there for at least 3 years after your MBA to be able to extract maximum value from it. However, there are many cases of people who do come back, and that's completely normal as well. But I'm saying this more from a perspective of like extracting maximum value of the MBA experience, but also getting back the financial sort of stability that you want after having paid so much for it. So keep that in mind when weighing whether you want to settle there.
Fine. So there is a question that we can come back to because we can have a lengthy discussion on that. In between, Malika is asking sources that you found helpful, Mayank.
So my thought process was first to kind of figure out my challenges, and then like I knew what was my challenge, and second I realized pretty quick that CAT is an exam which depends a lot on speed and accuracy, and so it's more like practicing papers and everything and doing things well in the 3-hour period that I had. So for me, I took time, but I didn't go to classes. I just took their online material and practiced it on my own. They have a pretty rounded set in terms of covering different sections, different types of questions. And their practice material is also really good to kind of simulate the examination experience. So I guess that was really helpful for me. So time is something that is good. You could do others like Career Launcher. I've seen friends doing them and recommending them also. But that's from 2018, so I do not know which one is the best. But I guess these coaching institutes do provide really good material. But what I would advise is you decide what you want to do, like which ones you like among these, and then focus on one of them instead of doing from 5 different places. It's similar to what we did for what at least I did for JEE preparation, like do one book, but do it really well. So you get the things, you get the practice and everything instead of doing like 5 different things. Yeah.
Great. So I think we'll just take the final question now from Jasmine. Like, how can I decide about doing an MBA abroad versus India if both are doable options for me in terms of career perspective and the output? So I think you both can give valuable inputs to this question.
Sure. So I think I am going first for this one. In terms of like whether you want to go an MBA abroad or India, I think there are a couple of factors you should look at. One is in terms of your career aspirations. Are you somebody who sees yourself settling in India and you want to have an India-based career? That's completely fine. Maybe an IIM makes way more sense for you because you can build a local network, you can have local work experience, etc. If you're somebody who wants a global career path, you want to be able to work in different countries, work in the head offices of these large organizations, probably doing an MBA from abroad, specifically US makes sense. The second obviously factor here is about the finances, so like in terms of the commitment required to be able to go abroad. So if you think it's something which is not going to be feasible for you, and I am in terms of an ROI perspective, just based on like value for money is probably way better than the US MBA case. The job I am the cost to study is not that I think treating the US MBA from a ROI is probably not the right way to look at it. Like if you want to do an MBA from US, you should look at it and only do it if you think things like experience, things like different countries, etc. is valuable. And if those experiences mean something to you, I think that US MBA makes a lot of sense. And finally, I think it's just about the nature of the course itself. MBAs abroad are typically a lot more driven by the students themselves, a lot more collaborative and a lot more like, based on things like teamwork and like slightly a little more. The MBAs in India are a little more academically rigorous, which is also a good thing because you want something get that strong financial background. If you want something really upskills you in that sense, an Indian MBA makes 100% more sense for you versus say an MBA abroad, which is again a large part of it is the intangible aspect, your soft skill development, which obviously happens in MBAs as well. But I'm saying the focus is a lot more on that in schools.
Yeah, I
Mayank,
think
what do
Jamal covered it pretty well. From my perspective, two things I would want to like. All the points are really important, but two things I want to highlight. One is kind of the financial aspect of it, and deciding where you want to stay in the longer run. Because US MBA is kind of the return on investment is a bit longer, and so if you want to stay in US or say in a foreign country and pay off your loans, then it kind of makes sense. For me personally, I wanted to stay closer to India at the start, and the Indian MBA, while there are not a lot of roles in say US or Europe, but you can definitely get roles in Asia, so Southeast Asia or India, around these are the places where you get the maximum of the roles. So if you want to stay nearby in India or nearby, say UAE or these countries, then an Indian MBA might be more fruitful because the ROI is quicker, and and yeah, you can figure and you can get in quick. And second benefit is kind of that you can get in quicker at a more younger age than say a US MBA, and so if you are sure you want to do an MBA, that can be a good perspective also. So yeah, I guess highlighting those two things is kind of uh, when you do the trade-off are really important, the finances and where you want to stay.
I think that answers most of our questions from the audience. If you have any particular questions to any of them, like you can connect with them through LinkedIn, or you can contact us or contact them directly if you want to connect with them. We shall conclude this session by now. We have time constraints. So thanks a lot, Jaymal. Thanks a lot, Mayank, for joining us for this session. It was really insightful. I think everybody got something out of this. And thanks a lot for joining. Yeah.
Much. Thanks, Maya.
Thanks, Abhinav. Thanks, guys.
All right.